Me and my girlfriend have never fought, we get along fine. We have been living together for 9 years now, and have been dating for 12 years. We have a healthy sex life, we both have decent jobs that bring in decent money. In the past we talked about marriage a lot and would often joke about what our wedding would be like. Yes, I know how stupidly lame this sounds, however we always agreed we needed to settle down first. We bought a house about 1.5 years ago, and were finally able to settle down. Our work schedules normalized, we were able to remove a huge waste of time from commuting. And we were finally able to take various activities after work, e.g., dancing classes, cooking classes, etc. We were able to finally settle down. Finally we decided to take a week off and unplug on the week of 12-year anniversary. She wanted to go camping and hiking, and do the things we used to do when we were first dating. Unbeknownst to her, I secretly decided to pick the exact same area where we met to do our hiking / camping trip. 2 weeks ago as we are leaving she realizes where we are going and becomes ecstatic, and gushes about how romantic I am. More or less everything seems perfect. We do our hike, and we unpack, set up, and by sundown everything feels perfect. So I decided to pop the question. This is where everything kind of falls apart. I ask her, and she just says no. We literally went from I love yous to the single most awkward silence I have ever had in my life in the time span of about a minute. We sat there kind of not saying anything before she says she is tired and goes to bed. She basically proceeds to cry herself to sleep while I sat there doing nothing. I basically didn't sleep, and the next morning, she says she wants to go home. So we pack up and have a really awkward 3-hour hike back to our car. There were a few times where things kind of felt normal and we were joking around like we used to be for a bit. On the way back home, we are talking and chatting normally, but it just feels awkward. At one point we stopped for coffee, and asked if she wanted to talk about what happened, and all I got was a curt no. This is followed by another extremely long silence for the rest of the drive home. We finally get home and I unpack everything while she goes off to bed. She is going to bed. Cue more crying. I tried really hard to talk to her, but she pretty much told me that she just needs time to be alone and think. The next day she tells me she is going to take some time and see her family, which is literally on the other side of the country. It has been about 2 weeks since I dropped her off at the airport. She sent me a few messages to tell me she is fine, and that she needs some more time to think. Her best friend has been asking me every other day about what is going on with her, since she hasn't really been responding at all. I know she is okay, though, due to her posting some pictures of her and her family on Instagram. But it just feels really weird. I am an absolute giant mess. I just don't quite understand what is going on. None of my friends have really offered me anything of value. I just feel if I didn't ask the question everything would be absolutely fine, and I don't really understand what is going on. I keep wanting to grab her laptop to try and figure out anything. I am not close to her parents at all, but I trust her and want to respect her space, but I don't know when she is coming back. I even sent her a message this morning, and I know she saw the message and received it, but hasn't replied. Also, her work has called me this morning asking about where she is. Apparently she had taken an extra week off last week, but she was supposed to be in yesterday. Now everything feels like it is falling apart and I have no idea what to do. The reason why it took so long for us to get married is we both agreed we wouldn't move to the next step until we finished the following. We both finished school. For her that wasn't until 2 years ago. We both had stable jobs. We had a place where we could agree would be good enough to take stuff to the next step. We both had decent working hours. For a long time she was doing her residency and we more or less worked opposite shifts. We did talk about marriage and kids, and both agreed it would be part of the next step after we got settled. Recently, my cousin and cousin-in-law have been thinking about relocating to our state because of recent job opportunities, and we've hosted them in the past when they visited. The first time they stayed with us, before my son was born. My nephew seemed to develop a strong attachment to my wife and always wanted to be near her. He drew a picture of a heart and picked some flowers from our yard and gave them to her before they left, saying he loved her. My wife thought this was sweet and gently handled his crush by telling him she would always love him as his aunt. But she was sure he would find another girl to fill his heart soon. He told her no, she was his girlfriend. This weekend, they were staying with us again, and my nephew again wanted to be near my wife every chance he got. His mom and dad noticed and told him that because my wife now had to care for our son, she couldn't pay attention to him as much as before. He got upset telling us that she was his girlfriend and had a meltdown, which caused my son to start crying. When my wife got up to take our son to another room to calm him down, my nephew got up to follow and his dad had to forcibly restrain him from following them. I stood up to block the hallway into the separate room just in case he got away from his dad. Once they calmed him down, they apologized for his behavior and said they would keep better tabs on him. Here's the part where I may be the asshole. I told my cousins I didn't feel comfortable with my nephew being so possessive of my wife, and I know for sure she didn't. Especially since he seemed to be so jealous of our son. I told them I couldn't allow their son in our home until he learned to control himself and understand that my wife was not his girlfriend. I apologized but asked them to get a hotel room for the rest of their stay and not to visit us again unless they left my nephew behind with people they could trust and knew would care for him, while they searched for jobs in our state. They didn't say anything but looked saddened and went to the guest room with their son to pack up their bags. I guess they must have told my extended family what happened because my paternal grandmother called me this afternoon, telling me that I should have been more understanding and that I was wrong to ask them to leave. Am I the asshole? Technically, my cousin is my second cousin. My dad is an only child, so the cousin I refer to in my post is the son of my own dad's first cousin. My paternal grandmother and his paternal grandfather were siblings. I'm not sure if this is correct, but his autistic son would technically be my third cousin. The reason I refer to him as my nephew is because he's the generation after mine in our family tree, and it's less of a mouthful to refer to him as Cousin X removed. A lot of people have posted that it's not correct to refer to him as my nephew, but to be frank, I don't care. And my family's never followed this traditional genealogy nomenclature. Without being specific, in the western state I was born and grew up in, it's not uncommon to refer to even close, unrelated adults as uncles or aunts. I call him my nephew because my cousin and I were close, and I still hope to have a close relationship with him if at all possible. Though I don't know how after this situation. Some have asked if I was jealous of my nephew calling my wife his GF. The first time, I thought it was amusing and was surprised that he had any romantic notions towards anyone, let alone my wife. Remember, in my mind he's my nephew and I never thought of him as anything other than a large kid because of his developmental delays and normal, for him, childlike behavior. Regarding the situation that happened this weekend, I was only concerned for my wife and son's safety. I didn't know how he would react and followed my cousin's lead, but wasn't about to let him get near my wife and son once they left the room. I don't know what was said to my paternal grandmother, but I don't want to react in anger and want to talk to my cousin once we've both had time to process what happened and calmed down. My husband, Asian, and I, American, welcomed our firstborn 4 weeks ago. The baby is healthy, thank God, but I'm exhausted, haven't fixed my hair, barely able to shower and cannot sleep. My husband's family had been pressuring us to visit to meet the baby. I tried to hold them off as much as I could, but yesterday, I was surprised to find them standing on the porch. Turns out hubby invited them for dinner. I was embarrassed and felt like I wasn't ready for visitors, judgmental ones at that, cause the house was a mess, y'all. Anyways, my husband sat with them while I fed my son, then later I asked my husband if we should order takeout for dinner. He said no, because his parents would find this rude and unwelcoming. He suggested that I go inside the kitchen and prepare something, anything long as it's homemade. I said fine, then went and made some mac and cheese. The reason I prepared this meal is because of how easy it is. Once I served the family, my husband's mom looked at me and was appalled. I noticed something was wrong. She asked if I really found it appropriate to serve her and the family mac and cheese. I asked why not, and she went on a rant about how disrespectful this was and that I clearly have no experience in what is right and wrong when it comes to hosting. I said, excuse me? Who said I signed up to host an expected visit from them? And she took it as in I didn't want them there. Her husband said they were just there to finally see the baby that I kept them from seeing for an entire month. That's a whole month of his life they'd missed out on. We had an argument and they decided to go home. My husband said that deciding to serve his family mac and cheese was more offensive than serving them nothing at all. I told him I was too exhausted to cook their traditional feasts that I was forced to learn from his mom. He took offense and said that I was being mean and disrespectful towards not only his family but his culture. I went inside the bedroom to stay with my son. My husband stayed on the phone with his family for an hour, then kept giving me the cold shoulder, and refused to eat what I cook in support of his family. I understand how some guests might find it offensive, especially his family, but I was just trying to make a quick homemade meal like my husband wanted. My cousin turned 18 recently. She's in high school. She doesn't have a car, and during her birthday weekend, thought her parents were going to buy her one. They didn't get her one and she was pretty upset. I should note that I'm not very close with my cousin, or the rest of my extended family for that matter. I only heard about this through the grapevine from my dad. Anyway, my cousin texts me on the Friday before her birthday asking if she can take my car. I just leased a new Ford Escape, to the mall and then for an out-of-town road trip with her friends over the weekend. I tell her no. She begs and pleads with me. I tell her no again. My car is for me to drive and for me only. If she wants her own car, she can save up and buy one. She calls me and says that I ruined her birthday and that she's embarrassed because her friends think she got a car for her birthday and she doesn't have one. I don't respond to her and think nothing of it. The weekend comes and I sleep in very late on that Saturday, waking up at 1 p.m. Don't judge. Even though my car is parked in my driveway and my gate is closed, I come to realize that someone egged and TP'd my car. With many, many eggs and 5 to 6 rolls of TP. And since the weather was warm outside, the raw egg baked into my car, along with the dried up toilet paper, destroying the paint. Since I have security cameras around my house, I decide to go back and watch. At around 9:30ish that morning, I see my cousin and a bunch of her stupid friends vandalizing my car. I'm surprised she didn't smash the windows and poke holes in the tires too. I press charges and my cousin is in legal trouble. Her and her parents are pissed off at me for pressing charges, her parents telling me that she's just a kid, and that she's been through a lot of emotional stress doing virtual schooling for this past year, and that I should take that into consideration, and that I should be ashamed of myself for pressing legal charges against my baby cousin. That I'm almost 30 and don't I remember what I was like at that age? I do remember, and I wasn't stupid enough to egg anyone's car. And can't she work something out with me, like doing chores around my house for money if I drop the charges, that she's young, that she doesn't need a felony on her record, etc., and that it was just a prank. Right after I pressed charges, my cousin was calling and texting me over and over saying that this could have been avoided had I let her take my car. I need to add that my cousin already has a felony on her record, a DUI. She's not remorseful of anything. Also, my aunt and uncle will not pay me for the damages. They just want me to drop the charges and pay for everything myself like nothing happened.